you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society. Well. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas to all. Hopefully to all it was a good night. And depending on what kind of tickets you held after week 17 of the NFL, maybe it is a good weekend. Welcome in to another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik. How was the holiday, my friend?
Oh, we are still up in the holidays. Gas. Dude, I love Tuesday mornings, and I love that we were with you Christmas Eve. We're with you New Year's Eve, right? A lot of people taking a lot of time off, not us. We got something on the calendar today, but I love talking with you, brother. And for me, it's such a privilege, and I think we're going to put a 12-pack together and hopefully expand upon it, but I love it. Holidays have been great, but I'd be lying to you if I told you that talking sports wasn't more exciting for me than anything that's happened over the holidays.
Wow, I got to tell you, the best gift that I got over the holidays, Jay, was a 4X Remember the Show shirt that my kid is going to be really pissed at me that I didn't wear on the show today, because when he gave it to me, he said, you got to show Jason, you got to wear it on the show, because Bully B has been a fantastic supporter of not only everything that you're a part of, but this show as well. And I did. And you got the Bully shirt on as well, but they actually made them for large people. I was thrilled.
4X. I've seen you in person. You're not a 4X. You're a tall guy. You're a big man. Not just a little chubby. You're a big guy.
Yeah, I'm like, even if I were in the, say, high 200s, let's say, I would still be a 2X tall. Yeah, exactly. So I loved it, though, but the kid knew what to get me.
I love it.
And I was I got, my youngest is a great gift giver, and he loves the show, and he loves you and all that kind of stuff. So it was fantastic. It was a good holiday overall. Oh, name? Jack, my man, Jack.
You mean Jack loves John? Don't get it twisted. Likes me.
No. Oh, no.
Me.
No, he quotes stuff that we say on this show every week.
Ooh. So Jack is a fan of Gas Morning Drive. He likes the Gresh Anik show.
Well, and he's also got like a 3.4 GPA, but he still finds time to be able to check us out every Tuesday. So I will take that. Well, brother, you and I are gonna, we say this is a cross section of sports and gambling and things like that, but every once in a while there's a story that sort of shakes up the NFL, Jay, and that's what happened last weekend when the New York Football Giants accidentally won a football game against the Indianapolis Colts, and the New England Patriots have done what they've done all year, which is just suck. But as you and I sit here going into week 18, Jason Anik at Boston Anik, everywhere all over the internet, the New England Patriots are the holders of the number 1 pick. And Jay, I got to say, I think this complicates things even more for the Patriots. If they were sitting there at number 2 and you took Travis Hunter and he came to you, nobody would say a word. Now, bro, with the number 1 pick in the draft, the world opens up in a way where the Patriots might be able to pivot away from this mistake that they've made. What's been going through your mind now that New England sits number 1?
Well, what I was about to say, when you just said pivot away from this mistake that they've made, like I guess maybe we'll go back to that, but that stopped me in my tracks. Are you referring to mistake that they made? Not Drake May. What are you talking about?
Well, the whole thing, right? Do we believe Jerod Mayo's the right guy? Do we believe Elliott Wolf is the right guy? Now, whether you want to land on Drake May, I think there's a discussion for you and I to have, because let's be real, with the number 1 pick, so much opens up for you. I'm not necessarily advocating the trading of Drake May, but don't you now, with the number 1 pick, Jay, have the ability to do a hard reset? Because there's no way Robert Kraft looks around and says, oh yeah, this is working great.
There's so much to unpack here, right? And I'm more interested in listening to you than talking myself today in terms of some of this stuff. But what I will say is I actually don't think this is going to be as relevant to conversation 1 week from today, because as we look at the week 18 schedule, I don't think the Patriots are going to hold on to that number one pick. I still think they have a great chance to better the roster however they want to do so in this draft. But correct me if I'm wrong, and we will get to week 18. We will get back to where you were going. Mm-hmm. But didn't you say when we were maybe thinking they had the number 2 or the number 3 pick, you would not want them to mortgage any sort of future and look for draft capital? You want them to sort of lock up Travis Hunter, yes?
Correct. Yes.
So let's just talk about that one point, right? And we could talk about Drake May. We could talk about moving on from Drake May, which I think is just sort of having fun on a Tuesday and bullshitting. But you still would love to see them end up with Travis Hunter out of this draft, no?
There's no question. Here's the worst fear now that the Patriots have the number 1 pick, Jay, is that they're going to try to get too cute with it. Oh, it's capital. We can trade down. We can do this. Hey, we drafted Jalen Polk last year. Do we need to turn around and grab a guy that's a wide receiver and a corner? So, yeah, my fear is that because it's the number 1 pick, if someone in the building doesn't love Drake May, they could flip him for a pick if they want to and draft somebody else at the top of the round. They could turn around, and you're right, to the point, they could take Travis Hunter. But it feels like if you're giving Elliott Wolf the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick, it's going to be, I need to prove that I can do what Daddy did in Green Bay.
Well, and I guess I have to go to week 18, right? Because Mitch Trubisky is quarterbacking the Buffalo Bills. And right, I think this is going to be moot if the Patriots win this game, right? Now, I would shut Drake May down. I don't think he was concussed last week, but there's, the Patriots could do whatever they want. This tanking conversation, Gresh, we could do an hour on what tanking is. And you look at the New York Giants last week and you think about the 53 guys in that locker room that get that win. They certainly need a quarterback, right? But we don't know if Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, who's better, right? If we were to flip last year's draft, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, maybe Jaden Daniels would be the guy as of today. Man, there's so much to talk about. But I guess for me, right, I think the Patriots are going to beat a Bills team. It's a lot easier to tank in a situation like the Bills have to tank. They're tanking one game almost, right? Because they don't have to win a game, right? What do you do if you're the Patriots? I think the Patriots are going to stumble and find a way to win this game Sunday.
Yeah, I do not. I have zero faith in them whatsoever. Honestly, Jay, and more of what I hear out of Foxborough is hey, he's a nice guy and everything, but I don't know. I can't wait to get the hell out of here because it's been a long season up there in Foxborough. And look, I don't think the Patriots win this game. I think they know the orders. And I also think that you brought up the T word, right? Tanking. There is an art to it. You can be obvious about it and just sit people down. Like what Kansas City is going to do in sitting down their starters is not tanking a game. Tanking is when you're doing it for draft gain, in my opinion. So That's where the Giants are, the Patriots are at. Nobody's talking about Tennessee. Tennessee might stumble into the number 1 pick when It's all said and done. But I think if you're New England and you're Jerod Mayo, you're smart enough to know what you don't need to be told. Does that make sense?
No question about it. But this league is funky, right? And so I guess when I think about that game and a Bills team that's prioritizing health as they should be, absolutely anything can happen no matter what you sort of try to do in terms of try to lose a game. And I guess as a Patriots fan, and Gresh, we could do an hour on this. As a Patriots fan, for me, I like Drake May. I think he's the guy, right? To me, I think he's a sure thing. I think they found their quarterback. So we could have conversations about Shedeur Sanders and if he wants to be the guy. But for me, as long as they find a way to get Travis Hunter, I think they have a great chance to get Travis Hunter, even if they stumble and beat the Bills this Sunday.
That would really be something, because if they won the game and still ended up with the number 1 pick, Jay,
they don't need to. No, I'm not. No. I'm not saying they win the game and end up with the number 1 pick. I'm saying win the game and end up with Travis Hunter, because they would still have pick 2, 3, or 4, perhaps.
Now, see, therein lies the rub of being number 1 here, right? So you go to tankathon.com, and in terms of strength of schedule, New England they're 0.467 on the strength of schedule. Tennessee is 0.515, right? So when you look at Tennessee, they're playing Houston. Now, we mentioned tanking, sitting, taking care of your roster, what's Houston going to do against Tennessee? They've already got the division sewn up. They have no reason to play anybody. Yep. That's why handicapping this week is incredibly difficult because you don't know who's going to sit who. Like Cleveland's going to be in a competitive game. They're taking on Baltimore. Baltimore's got something to play for. So I expect Cleveland to lose and be there. I think the Giants are going to lose again. That's the thing. If the Patriots win, Jay, they might go into the 4 spot where the Giants are, which means not only do you lose out on possibly maybe trading the number 1 pick and doing the reset, but then you're down at number 4 where you know you're not going to get Travis Hunter. So in a lot of ways for New England, they almost have to lose this game to ensure their chance at him, whether they choose to pick the guy or not. And this is wild, bro. Shadir Sanders is still minus 125 to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And you got Travis Hunter behind Cam Ward at plus 350. When if it is New England and they stay at the top, I think they're a lock to take Travis Hunter if they stay there. That plus 350, that plus 350 on Hunter right now is juicy.
So I agree. Great stuff all around there, right? So when you say if they stay in that one, let's say the Patriots get the number 1 pick and they stay in that slot, I agree with you. If they can't move out of it, even if they would want to move down to 3, right, and get a little juice back, you say they would take Travis Hunter. So, we had a text exchange that I thought was kind of interesting, and it was prior to the Giants winning this football game. But you said no, and we're talking about Drake May. No, I'd trade him for the number 1. And you said, let me tell you why I think he's fucked, talking about Drake May. He never, ever gets mad. He never, ever gets mad, ever. So, but you like Drake May enough to, if you were in that number 1, are you getting crazy now, Gresh? So you just said if the Patriots stay there, you take Travis Hunter. Are you suggesting that you try to go nuts and bring in Dion and Shador Sanders? And
no. I'm not going the Dion route. But if they, here's a couple of scenarios, right, that'll tie into what you said. If you're Robert Kraft and you have the number 1 pick and you could set a true 5-year plan, I'm going to bring in the right head coach, the right general manager, and then I would have 5 years with a quarterback that we might draft, and maybe you lean towards Shadir Sanders, right? So there's that option. Now, I don't think Robert Kraft's going to go nuclear, even though he probably should, because we've seen that Jerod Mayo is not the right guy for the job, even with a little bit of experience. But do they still believe in Elliott Wolf? So if there isn't going to be the hard reset, then Drake May is going to be the quarterback. But we know that Elliott Wolf is going to be tempted to want to trade that number 1 pick. So if you're Robert Kraft, do you say, no, we need to take this guy? And maybe, Jay, more importantly, is it Jonathan Kraft behind the scenes who is finally getting heard and saying, no, we need juice. We need hope. Travis Hunter would bring us hope and would be worthy of the number 1 pick. So really the bigger question is for me, Jay, with the number 1 pick, if you wanted to do a hard reset and you're Robert Kraft, do you do it? Because if you and I, God willing, are sitting here at week 18 next year, and we're talking about New England with a 3rd straight year of a top 3 pick, and then getting rid of the coach, and you pissed away 2 years of Drake May, you're going to be way more hot about it than I am.
Well put. And man, you're filling my brain with so many thoughts. But for me, Drake May is part of that hard reset and still can be part of that hard reset. Dude's 22 years old. He's younger than Shador Sanders. Man, I'm an old man at 46 years old. I've seen a lot of things in this league. I have no time for the Mac Jones, Drake May comparisons. These are totally different players. Drake May is it. Drake May, if the Patriots want to fuck around and trade Drake May, he is going to make them pay. Do I think Shador Sanders and Cam Ward could be good NFL quarterbacks? Sure. I think all 5 or 6 that were taken last year in this NFL draft quarterbacks could all potentially be franchise guys. Penix, Bo Nix, all of them, even Caleb Williams. So I think it's wide open, but I think Drake May is him. And I think, frankly, unless the Patriots find a way to win this game and end up in the number 4 spot, the world is their oyster. But I think your point about Elliott Wolf, right? Elliott Wolf replacing him, if he's not the guy, maybe as important as replacing Jerod Mayo. I don't know what I think of Elliott Wolf. I don't know.
Well, I mean, everyone is giving him credit for drafting Drake May. And I would say
that was not, yeah.
Why?
Was pretty, right.
Because they came out and said, basically, well, we like them all. Whichever of the three falls to us, we'll just work with. It wasn't like they made a choice. Like, that's the whole thing with Drake May. And look, is Drake May going to be better than Shadir Sanders and Cam Ward? Yes. But will he be great? That's the part that I don't really know. I think people are automatically projecting that because you see some flash plays from the guy, that he's going to be great. He still throws off his back foot. He's had a turnover every start. Yep. This is the guy who, in all honesty, tell me where he's gotten better the last 8 weeks.
That's a great question.
And that's very well happening.
Coming off his worst game, right? But I actually don't see it as flashes. I actually consistently like what I see at that position out of him. I love, and you talk about the moxie, right? That he doesn't get mad ever, right? He wasn't concussed. He didn't lose consciousness. He had his head off of the ground. He took a minute to sort of collect himself after getting blown up. He was so mad going down the stairs, shaking his head. Yeah, he played his worst game, but man, he looks 22 in every facet to me. And so, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's regression where I haven't necessarily seen the improvement. I think that offensive line is such a joke. I see a guy like Sam Darnold and what he gets to throw behind, juxtaposed to what Drake May is sort of dealing with. So I think that I feel like inside of you, I think you really like a lot of what you see in Drake May. I really do.
I mean, I love it that you're talking yourself into it, because I've been looking for every reason to embrace Drake May. And look, there are some things I like. You love the athleticism, you love the arm. But I'm telling you, guys like that develop bad habits. Cam Newton, he won an MVP, but he was one of them. When you took him outside of Carolina taking care of him, you realize he couldn't hit a bull in the ass with a fistful of rice.
My biggest concern with Drake May, believe it or not, is just the concussion thing. If you want to know the truth, that I think he really needs to protect himself and not be in one of those situations. You know what I mean? Even though he wasn't concussed there, he didn't slide. But
Chris, you know what? It's interesting you say that, because on TV this week, I did a breakdown of Drake May in the pocket, throwing off the back foot. One of the things that I highlighted was his spin move. People are going to get hip to it, and that's exactly what happened. They got hip to the spin move, and that's why the guy got tattooed. So that's an astute point on your part of some of the stuff that Drake May needs to clean up in his game.
You see some of the play calls last night from Ben Johnson for the Detroit Lions offense. I'm telling you, it is such a disservice to Drake May if he does not have different leadership. And frankly, if you're going to keep Jerod Mayo, get a different coordinator in there. Eye test, but Van Pelt just isn't getting it done. And to your point, that spin move, right, Gresh?
Yep.
Maybe you get a coordinator in there, talk to him about some of that. But I think you're going to see big improvements from Drake May. And I guess if I watch some film week to week, I do think we're seeing some growth. But you're coming off 2 days ago his worst showing in my mind.
Well, here's just one thing to remember before we move on. If you get a new coordinator and you leave them with Mayo, and then at the end of year 2, you're like, yep, year 1 is what Mayo really is, and then you get rid of the guy, now you're running the risk of giving Drake May a third offensive coordinator in 3 years, or you're setting him up to where it's like Caleb Williams, to where some offensive coordinator would get like the short-term reins to be able to run the team to see if they. I think the decision on Mayo is as important as the offensive coordinator. And again, Travis Hunter plus money for the number 1 pick. I got to lock in on that, because there's a great chance he's going to be the number 1 pick when it's all said and done.
Oh, it's just so interesting. And we've had week to week on this show. It was plus 225, then plus 900.
Yep.
I still think a QB goes 1. I think ultimately if the Patriots stay in that 1 slot, I think they'll be able to move to number 3 and get a little juice coming back.
Oh, boy, we will find out. And let's see what happens here in week 18. And Jay, speaking of week 18, I know we had the Monday Nighter last night. You just mentioned Ben Johnson. Detroit ended up putting up a bunch of points in San Francisco to win, because quite honestly, that's about the only way they're going to win these days. But that sets up Sunday Night Football for the number 1 seed in the NFC, the North Division title, 14-2 versus 14-2. The Vikings are at the Lions. Detroit's a 2.5-point favorite, total at 57. Minnesota, a juicy plus 124 on the money line if you like Minnesota in this spot. And it's hard not to love Dan Campbell and what he's done. And Jay, I might be wrong, and you might be telling me the week of the Super Bowl that I'm dead wrong. But at some point, like Slim Shady, the real Sam Darnold's going to show up, and it ain't going to be good.
Oh, I wish I didn't agree with every word out of your mouth. And how about Dan Campbell in a game like last night, right? I mean, you're listening to the broadcast, right? And Troy Aikman cannot stop talking about. Troy might as well have said, I don't know why he's playing his starters. He just kept saying all night, right? He was jockeying around the point. But Dan Campbell does whatever he wants to do. Showed us those yellow teeth up close on the camera last night. Oh, every time I want to doubt Detroit, I'm like, Dan fucking Campbell. Do you know what I mean? But this game for Sunday night, I mean, the stakes, right? Winning team obviously gets the bye, and then you rest at home, and then you host one game with the chance to host the championship game. The loser receives the 5th seed in the NFC and a trip to maybe the Rams as the most likely scenario. I mean, it's insane.
Oh,
yes,
it's interesting that you work up this machination, right? Because if you're Detroit, I think the number 1 seed and playing indoors really matters for them, right? But if you're the 5 seed, you're going to either Tampa or Atlanta. And for Minnesota and Detroit, that's a very winnable game. No. I think, you're right. LA gets the 6th seed. And I know right now Washington is in the 6th because they won their win. Washington's win actually clinched it for the Rams. So right now it's set up Green Bay going to Philly, which is a death blow for Green Bay. You know why? Look at all the teams that are good that they played this year. 0-5. Yep. They're not going to Philly and getting a win. And if you're the 6, which would be Washington, you're going to play the Rams. And if you're the 5, you're going to Tampa or Atlanta in the first round. And then you might match up against Philadelphia. Depending on how that goes, you might go play Detroit. And if you're Minnesota, you're not afraid of playing Detroit in Detroit. And I know we still have one more game to go. But, bro, I mean, when you think about it, if you're the 5 seed in the NFC, it's not a real difficult road. You're at least going to win your road wildcard game, and then you're against a Philadelphia or a Minnesota, which you would have been up against anyway.
I still think it's wide open. I don't think any of those wins are gimmies. If you're going at Tampa Bay, no fucking way is that a gimme, right? And I don't know if the Rams hold on in that 3 slot, right? They got the Seahawks coming in. It's a very interesting game. Our guy on OddsShark, Tony Farmer's on the Seahawks -3 at the Rams, right? Very likely you're going to get the starters for Seattle versus the Rams benching their guys. Geno Smith has up to $6 million in incentives in this game this weekend. So I think Seattle maybe gets that win, and maybe the Rams are the 4 seed. But no, I think the NFC is wide open, and that's why I think that number 1 seed is just such a priority Sunday night. I can't fucking wait. I think a lot of people like Minnesota.
Oh, I think Minnesota. I think people are smarting on Minnesota right now because they're becoming one of those, the Cinderella team. And Donald, and here we go. It's like Carl Spackler in Caddyshack. Hey, as a quick aside, and I know we got more to get through here, but my wife had sent me a text earlier today, Jay, off of something that you mentioned, and you could tell that you're an astute gambler and you know what you're doing, because in week 18, one of the things that you do is turn to what I would call the incentives market. And you nailed it, right? Geno Smith. Well, what was that number again? He needs, what is it?
There are various things, but he can, I believe it's up to $6 million tomorrow or Sunday, excuse me. It's insane.
So you were on Tampa Bay, right? Do you know Mike Evans needs 5 catches and 85 yards for a $3 million bonus? You think Baker Mayfield isn't going to get that for him? So now look, folks, it doesn't mean go run and bet the Mike Evans props right away. But as a part of putting your information together, I think for figuring out what you're going to bet on, these are massive. Hey, oh, brother, here it is. This guy at Sal Betts, who ended up putting out this big string, right? Geno needs 186 yards to cash in a $2 million bonus. He also gets $2 million if Seattle wins and gets up to 10 wins. So,
Right.
so how about that for Geno? They can make the playoffs, bro. They're going against a Rams team who probably should not be playing anybody important anyway.
No way. Been banged up all year.
And if Seattle gets the win, so he throws for 200 yards and they get the win, which is 10, looks nice, feels good. And he walks away with $4 million, does Geno Smith. I mean, you know, there's stuff on Tony Pollard, Cortland Sutton, J.K. Dobbins. How about this quickly with Barkley? He needs 101 to set the rushing record in the NFL. There's some question as to what Philly is going to do. I don't know about you, man, and I haven't looked at the number, but I am all over Saquon props going over. I think they're going to feed the beast and make sure he gets the record with a little room to spare.
I agree 100% with that. That would be one prop I'd be looking to play. A lot of these props I'd be looking to play. Yeah, I'll be looking at Geno Smith, but you're going to be paying some juice. You're going to be paying a premium. His over yardage is going to be higher than you've probably seen it all season, given these incentives, right? And certainly there are going to be markets with receptions where, let's say, a guy needs 4.5 catches or 5 catches to generate a bonus. Those markets might be somewhat prohibitive from a gambling standpoint. But week 18 is fascinating. I went back and looked at some of the transpirations from last season's week 18 teams that sort of needed to win and get in. So that'll certainly impact some of my gambling. But as we sit here on a Tuesday, Gresh, there's going to be a lot of different things that come out, right? That Seattle -3 at the LA Rams, that line very much could move. So I'd be looking to... Yeah, so I played Seattle -160 on the money line because I just believe that they're prioritizing the win and the Rams will not be. But other than that, not too much action for me out of the gate as of yet.
Well, and the other thing, too, is trying to figure out, Broncos are -10 against Kansas City. That doesn't look right, but I know why it doesn't look right, but I need more info to determine how wrong the line is because Kansas City's way better than Denver.
Well, and I believe Blaine Gabbert got the win in week 18 for Kansas City last year. I think they won 13-12 or something. So,
yeah,
it's like that'll be one of those games where Kansas City, that game will be close or something fucked up will happen, right? I'm rooting so hard for the Bengals to make the playoffs. If Denver wins that game, they're in the postseason. I just, and for Kansas City, I know this may sound like a joke, but if I'm Kansas City and I say, oh, all right, so we just lay down and Denver wins here, and then there's no chance that our kryptonite Joe Burrow gets in here, right? So, sorry, I know that may sound silly. I said that before.
No, and I know that, and you're right. There is, look, everybody talks about how great Josh Allen is. Go beat Pat Mahomes in a big spot.
Right.
Honestly, and
Lamar Jackson. Look at the 2 MVP guys.
That's a great point. With all this national radio that I'm doing, I brought a topic the other day of if Mahomes gets the three-peat, how do you juxtapose that to the Brady legacy in terms of trying to make a case of great debates and who's the best and da-da-da, because the one thing that Tom Brady will always have on Pat Mahomes, he beat him as a Patriot in Kansas City and then beat him the next year as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer in the Super Bowl. It's going to be hard to trump card that, but you get 3 in a row. Even the great Brady didn't do that. So it does open up some interesting discussions. And I don't know about you, Jay, but I'm expecting Kansas City to bare minimum be in the Super Bowl again this year.
I tell you what, 3 in a row and 4 all told, he got a great chance to make those tiebreakers not even matter head to head because he's going to get 8 rings. You know what I mean? And trump Brady altogether. I mean, I know this is well documented, but the Patriots went 10 years between their 3, you know what I mean, without winning a championship. You think Patrick Mahomes is going to play the next 10 years without winning another 1 or 2 of these things, but to your point, right? You get in that 1 seed, right? You win a home game, you host the championship game. You can kind of fuck up a little bit and still find your way into the Super Bowl. So I agree with you.
No question about it.
I agree with you completely, right? But you talk about whether Josh Allen is going to win the MVP this year.
Yeah.
Maybe he and Lamar Jackson are neck and neck, but you give it to Josh Allen because Lamar Jackson's had a couple MVPs. For me, I think – go ahead.
No, go ahead because I want to get to those awards markets as well because there may be some opportunity there, but I'm curious as to what you're thinking about the MVP kind of outside Allen.
So I think Josh Allen's going to get it. And with the quick point that I was going to make, and I'll transition to the MVP, was just sort of like a law of averages thing. Oh, Baltimore's due. Buffalo's due to get Mahomes. You know what I mean? They're just sort of due to get them. I think Josh Allen's due to win the MVP, and he's going to win the MVP because it's close enough with Lamar Jackson that you can give Josh Allen that vote. And especially with Derrick Henry as a sort of 1A, if you will, right? I mean, Derrick Henry is the best offensive. James Cook's had a nice year too, but Derrick Henry is the best offensive player on either team. If you look at Allen, as you look at two quarterbacks.
Well, and Jackson, you got Jackson there.
Jackson,
and there we go. And as you can see in terms of the NFC odds right now, it's Detroit plus 180. How about Minnesota plus 380 right now? If you think they're winning that game and getting the number 1 seed, that still is great value on Minnesota in the NFC. And of course, Kansas City is still plus money for now. I think the only other team you're either going with the favorite or you're going with the team that, is in the 300s. Like, I would rather put money on Minnesota than Philadelphia. Only because if Minnesota gets the number 1 seed, I don't believe in Sam Darnold, but boy, that makes it a lot easier. And I'll be honest, instead of throwing 280 on the Bills or 100 on the Bills for 280, I would throw the 100 on Baltimore. Like you just mentioned, law of averages a little bit, but Derrick Henry has got to be a massive part of any playoff run. And as you can see there, how about that? You go Baltimore, Minnesota to win their respective conferences, you're bringing back $2,000 on a parlay.
Yeah, all good stuff there, right? And certainly anyone who likes, I believe you said the money line for this weekend's game, Minnesota plus 124 at Detroit. Anyone who likes that, I think you're obligated to throw a little sprinkle on Minnesota plus 380 to get out of the conference. I was talking to my brother John this morning about the Ravens at 7-1 to win the Super Bowl. And even the Eagles, to me, getting a little more value at 7-1 to win the Super Bowl. Forgive me, those are Hard Rock Bet down here in Florida. But 7-1 on the Eagles, you weren't getting that value a few weeks ago. I still think Jalen Hurts is going to be healthy. But ultimately for me, my brother said, when I said I like Baltimore 7-1, he's like, I like the Vikings 8.5-1 to win the Super Bowl. Or what do we have them here? 8-1, right? Just now to me, a lot of this hinges upon if you'll like them to beat Detroit this Sunday, because Correct. I do believe I like Minnesota much more to make their way through this as the 1 seed, where it wouldn't surprise me if they go on the road as the 5 seed and lose.
Yeah, because Kansas City and Detroit have had the value kind of sucked out of them. So you're right. The number 1 seed will definitely matter. It'd be real interesting to see what happens to that Detroit number if they end up in the 5 spot and having to go on the road. And, these awards, right? I think there's some betting opportunity, Jay, when it comes to the awards. We've gone through the MVP with Josh Allen at minus 300. We've been focusing so much on Detroit, Minnesota, right? So you see the MVP market there. Lamar Jackson is the only guy really in it. For Saquon Barkley, unfortunately, I think there's just a block with a lot of voters on running backs. But if you go to the Coach of the Year, Jay, what am I missing here? Kevin O'Connell is minus 1,000. Dan Campbell is plus 550. Doesn't this week's game factor in to who would win the Coach of the Year?
I actually think the odds make perfect sense, right? If I'm a voter, even if the Minnesota goes into Detroit and gets absolutely mauled, you finish the year 14-3 with Sam Darnold, and just given what Kevin O'Connell's done, right? They lost 2 games in a 5-day stretch this season, and the rest has just been wins, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I actually am not surprised by this. You also have to remember, Dan Campbell had a team that made it to the NFC Championship last year. He's done a great job. I know they've had injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I love me some Dan Campbell, but this award, it shouldn't necessarily be called Coach of the Year. It should almost be like exceeding expect/surprise Coach of the Year, So that's why I think the odds are where they are.
And it stinks because, if Detroit ends up winning again, that would be twice head-to-head beating Minnesota during the regular season. And to give it to the other guy, that's why I bring this up, that maybe those odds are due for a big shift because Dan Campbell is doing more with less. Look at their defense. I mean, forget just losing Aiden Hutchinson. I think they're down like 6 or 7 starters. And I do wonder if if Detroit does get the number 1 seed, if that's where people look at Dan Campbell and say, oh, okay, even though O'Connell did a great job, we got to give it to this guy. Look at what he's done.
Well, and how many coach of the years did Bill Belichick win, right? It's like, you could be sure plenty of years Patriots go 14-2. Belichick isn't getting a sniff.
No, it's very true. And neither of those guys are there yet. I think it matters. It's just at least worth keeping an eye on. Now, comeback player of the year. Again, am I missing something? Joe Burrow's minus 500. And I know he's on a heater. And come on, he was hurt, but Sam Darnold is plus 450. And again, in Minnesota's the number 1 seed. And even though Joe Burrow's been great and Cincinnati doesn't end up making the playoffs, doesn't this shift to where Darnold's got a chance to win this thing and he's plus money right now?
I agree completely. Sam Darnold's the comeback player of the year. He should be. You know, Joe Burrow, I understand the injury, right? But he still started 10 games last year. In the last 4 years, Burrow started 16, 16, 10, 16. I mean, he's 16 games this year, right? So Sam Darnold, he started 1 game last year. The former number 3 overall pick, I believe. I mean, far and away his best season. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm shocked at where these odds are. Makes me want to throw a little bit on it. Just because maybe if they do win this game at Detroit, it's a very interesting point. And I actually think your Dan Campbell points are very well taken too on the other side. But I agree with you. I don't know why this is a foregone conclusion.
And then there's defensive player of the year where TJ Watt's minus 125, Pat Surtain's plus 150. I only bring it up because if you're feeling frisky and you want to pick a side on that one, if Denver makes the playoffs, Surtain is going to get some big respect because Denver really will have gotten there riding the defense. And of course, TJ Watt is a perennial favorite every year. Hey, we're almost going to get to the point to where TJ Watt, like his brother, and kind of like what you brought up a second ago, Jay, with Belichick, the whole, they're too good for the award. You know, we're almost getting to that point. I kind of feel like with TJ Watt. By the way, folks, you are watching Gas. We do this every Tuesday at 11 a.m. We gas up your mornings. We are Gas Morning Drive. I am Gresh. He is Anik. You can follow us on all the socials. You can watch this show on the YouTube at The Real Gresh. You get me everywhere from YouTube to TikTok, all the way up and down at The Real Gresh. Same for at Boston Anik is where you can get Jay. Where do you Anik versus Anik this week? Are you guys live on Thursday, or is there a New Year's truce or something like that?
Oh, never a truce. That's hilarious. Is there a New Year's truce? You know us well. No, a lot of love for my brother. No, we'll be back live, oddshark.com, 11 a.m. Thursday. Cody Merrow at the helm, as usual, as he's driving this bus.
Absolutely. He drives our bus, too. But, your brother's been sitting around swapping thumbs, if you know what I mean. He's got 2 weeks off. What the hell?
Bro, it's so funny. I sat in with him on the Anik and Florian podcast yesterday, and as we start talking about MMA and we start talking about the UFC and we look back to those awards, and by the way, the F word is a sentence enhancer, okay? So I am so fucking excited for UFC 311, Gresh, like to get out to LA, right? This traveling UFC roadshow, it feels like it's once a month for me, kind of, or once every other month. I can't wait. And so, yes, it's been a nice respite for John. He needed the break, but he can't wait to get back out there. And I'm right there with him.
You put Makhachev back in the ring again, you've got my attention automatically. I love listening to Islam talk to DC about how crazy Khabib is.
Well, it's very interesting, right? And Khabib going to be also cornering Umar against Merab Dvalishvili. So a couple cornering task for Khabib Nurmagomedov. And, I think as we shift a little bit, talk about the UFC, it doesn't surprise me that I know Merab Dvalishvili, who the bantamweight champ, is turning it around a little more quickly than desired. It wouldn't surprise me if Khabib Nurmagomedov has something to do with that, right? There's some rumblings about Ramadan and Umar wanting to fight before that, but I think a lot of this may be getting Khabib Nurmagomedov in the building, cornering 2 athletes. I think it's going to do crazy pay-per-view.
I'm with you. I can't wait. I'm glad there's the European events, so I get more Shara Bullet as well. Someone in Nevada, please license this guy so that he can fight in America, because he is a movie villain. He looks like a movie villain. Honest to God, like you put him in a Bond movie, and then there's like, oh, this is my friend Shara Bullet, and then he looks into the camera. It's right out of Central Casting, bro. And I think we know that. Hey, tonight we do have one of the college football semifinals, and it's probably, Jay, going to be one of the games that'll be reasonably competitive. Fiesta Bowl, you've got Penn State and Boise. Boise is plus 11.5. And I say the competitive part of it because I feel like Boise will hang around for a little bit, but this is by far the biggest test that Boise will have in trying to run Ashton Jeanty all over the place. There is the James Franklin factor. I think Boise will be frisky for a little bit, but ultimately run out of gas. Now, I think we're going to get a blowout with Texas and Arizona State. But do you have a lean going into tonight? That's a big number with Boise, who clearly is playing up, given everyone they played on their schedule this year.
It sounds as though you believe Penn State will ultimately cover the number as the game goes along.
Yeah,
accurate?
I hate saying that, but yeah, I think it's like a 12 to 14 point win, but it won't feel like a blowout. Like I feel like Texas, Arizona State, it's going to be like, whoa, Arizona State got wagoned. I don't think Penn State's going to wagon Boise, but I do think incrementally they kind of pull away. Yeah.
Yeah, well, given your feelings about Franklin, I know that I'm going to be rooting hard for Boise State. I believe I played the over. I think I played Boise State over 17.5 points at minus 200. I know that sounds sort of chalky, but I do think they'll hang around a little bit. But I think this is one of those games where it may sort of look like levels, where Penn State just looks like sort of a bully a little bit. But I'll be rooting hard for Boise State. I wish they're playing on a blue field.
Yeah, it would be cool to play. I played on the blue turf once.
Did you?
Yep. When I was at URI in 93, our first game of the year was at Boise. So we went out there when they were like transitioning up to the FBS level and starting to build out that stadium. And what they do tell you is true. Like the coaches kind of walk through and they're like, listen, birds think this thing is a lake. So if all of a sudden you hear a bird just like nosedive right into the blue turf, don't think about it. Don't worry about it. They have somebody that comes along, scrapes them up and all that stuff. And sure enough, here it is. We're sitting there stretching. All of a sudden you hear just something, skunk, and you hear, and that was it. And they come out there and scoop it up. And
wow,
yeah, dumb birds think it's a lake and they try to fly right into it. It's pretty crazy.
Fascinating. I love that you played there. Was Rizzy on the squad back then or what?
No, that was the year after Riz had left. So 92 was my freshman year. The next year, 93, is when the new coaching staff came in. And I got to say, Boise, like cleanest city I was ever in.
Huh.
It was beautiful 30 some odd years ago. We also pulled a great prank on a freshman kicker and told him that they called the room because I was rooming with this guy. And I'll leave his name out so it's not completely embarrassing for him. But one of the seniors called and said, hey, we're from your local newspaper. We came to cover your first game. Can you come down to the lobby in your uniform so we can get a picture? And then the dumbass kid puts his uniform on, goes down in the lobby, and all the seniors are there like laughing at him because, oh, yeah, fantastic
I
stuff.
I love it.
I love the
take your picture, buddy.
Yep, exactly. Oh, my God. I'm going to do that to like my kids someday or something. Hey, on Saturday, we've got two really good NFL games. And I think you and I have responsibly covered the betting markets relative to the NFL schedule because it's difficult this week. Who's in, who's out, a lot of late week information. But go for the games that are competitive, or at least where each team needs to play. And that'd be the Browns at the Ravens. The Ravens with a win can clinch the AFC North. They get the number 3 seed. They would at least end up getting a home game. The Browns are just god-awful, Jay. Here's what worries me, though, is that Baltimore backs off the gas, and with such a big number at Ravens minus 18, it kind of screams backdoor cover. Win by 14, but you get screwed playing the favorite. I think the first half is what's really in play here. I don't like the full game Ravens minus 18, but if you give me first half minus 9.5, and even on DK as we look at it, it's at 17.5. But you're giving me anything under 10 with the Ravens for the first half, I want in.
I think you found the value. I'll be tailing it. I played it as soon as you sent it. I love it. I also like the over a little bit, right? I will look at the weather there, but I do think the Ravens are going to be putting up some points, and I do think the Browns will fight. And so you talk about maybe a backdoor cover. I think that backdoor over could cover in the same fashion, but I think you found the value because the Ravens have a lot to play for there. Because ultimately knowing if you're the Baltimore Ravens that it's going to be at Buffalo or at Kansas City or both to ultimately get there, you got to have that first game be at home. Because I think the conference, I really think this postseason is wide open in a unique way.
What do you mean?
I think that a lot of my opinions of the NFL have gone 180 degrees, where I thought maybe it was top heavy, where we had times this season where it was like, oh, Buffalo, Detroit, not even having Kansas City in the conversation, where now I think Kansas City is on that pedestal, right? Where, they are that sort of boogeyman that's been there, done it. But I think every single other team that is below them, I can make a case for. Pluck one: Vikings, Ravens, Bills, Eagles. I think there are a lot of teams. Packers, not as much, but I think there's a lot of depth there. Rams making a run because they are going to Detroit and Stafford's going in that building. I think when you have this tournament, I think it's wide open, maybe in a way that the college football playoff won't be,
Well, and it sounds like the college football playoff next year might jump to 14 as a reaction to the seeding and things like that this year. Just a couple of things on that Ravens game to keep an eye on. Derrick Henry has 1,783 yards this season. Saquon's got 2,005. But Derrick Henry is 78 yards shy of passing Tiki Barber for the most rush yards by a player 30 or older in NFL history.
Nice.
So there's a little something there. Mark Andrews, who started the year not well, he's got 10 receiving touchdowns this season. So maybe there for a touchdown prop. Keep an eye on someone like Andrews. And then there's the other side of this Saturday card, Jay, where you got the Bengals at the Steelers. That one is the Saturday night game at 8:00. And we know that the only thing the Bengals can do is just go try to win the game, right? Win the game and then hope you end up getting the appropriate amount of help that you think you need to be able to move on. But the Steelers actually will know whether they've lost the division or not. And that's the tricky part of this Saturday, Jay, that if the Browns pull the upset, then the Steelers are live to play everybody. If the Ravens win and the Steelers can't improve their position really, I wonder what Mike Tomlin will do in this game against the Bengals. Will he make it easier for them to get that win they need and then hope they make the postseason?
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I would put my house on the Ravens to find a way to win that football game on Saturday for a variety of reasons. I see no circumstance in which they lose that football game. For Cincinnati, I love that they get to play this game Saturday night and not know what's going to happen in Denver. You know what I mean? I like that Joe Burrow can finish this season. I love them to go in and beat Pittsburgh, even if Pittsburgh tries. That Pittsburgh schedule was daunting down the stretch, and it has been, a team that was sort of cute is not a contender. I talk about it being wide open. That is one team that I do not believe has any chance to make any noise in the postseason. So I really don't say, whether the bench guys or not, if I'm Pittsburgh, I think they need to find a way to win a game and have some momentum going in the right direction going into the postseason.
I would 100% agree with you. And for Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, it's really just let's control what we can control, keep trying to play as well as we can. And then Cincinnati is going to be one of those teams that you and I are going to have an off-season discussion about, because they have some very difficult decisions to make, and they've got more looming, and maybe there is opportunity there to pluck some people away from the Bengals. And yes, I am looking directly at Jamar Chase when I shouldn't be. Oh yeah. Oh, I think no. I mean, if you're Cincinnati and they're budget conscious, you pay T. Higgins less than you would Jamar Chase. You trade Jamar Chase maybe for a high-level draft pick. Now we're kind of talking here, right?
It's really interesting, and Andrew Whitworth, who spent a lot of time in Cincinnati, was adamant that they should have moved T. Higgins in the offseason because you can't keep both. That's a really interesting point. Hard for me to think that Chase and Burrow don't ride off into the sunset together ultimately. I think in a weird way, they got the same agent, I believe, Higgins and Chase. I just have, I don't know. I don't know. I just think I think Higgins is too good. I don't see how they are able to keep both of them, even though you and I have talked about this wide receiver market and perhaps there being a little bit of a correction, but I don't think it's going to correct itself soon enough for them to retain both of them. We would love to have you in New England.
Well, and here's a little more of what I'm thinking, just because I know we got some QB and head coach combos to get to here. But Jay, think of this. Let's say New England wins, okay? And Cleveland and Tennessee, they lose, and the Giants lose, and the Patriots find themselves at number 4. You lose out on lose out on Travis Hunter.
Right.
Why not take the number 4 pick and go to Cincinnati and say, listen, I'll help solve your problems. Why don't you trade me Jamar Chase for the number 4 pick? Then if you're the Patriots and you're spending $35 million, it ain't on Calvin frickin' Ridley, it's on Jamar goddamn Chase. Guy who's going to come in and do it for you. There are ways that you can get, you miss out on a wide receiver in free agency. Fine. I'll work out a deal to flip the number 4 pick and go take a great player off of someone's hands, admittedly, that they're not going to want to pay. I know it's getting into the fantasy world, but still, I think those,
very interesting.
They're very real. We do have some semifinal college football games. I think Texas blows doors. What's your lean on Ohio State and Oregon, bro? I was all over Oregon, and then the line came out Ohio State -2.5, and it stopped me in my tracks. And now, even though I loved Oregon going in, the handicappers have given me a ton to think about here.
Yeah, it really is interesting. I like Ohio State in this game. I have sort of felt as though that Michigan loss is going to galvanize this team and perhaps be what takes them to winning the whole thing. We talked about early on a different episode of Gas when the Patriots beat the Giants in week 17 on the way to losing to the Giants in the Super Bowl to not go 19-0 or whatever it was. And I actually think this loss is going to be important for Ohio State. Oregon is the only undefeated team. Am I correct?
Correct.
A little pressure there, right? The line, I think, is kind of what it is. I still don't fully understand why Ohio State is the favorite, but I do believe had they not shit the bet against Michigan, they would be. I like Ohio State in this game. I think it's a comfortable place for them in the Rose Bowl, but I can't wait for these two teams to face off in this stage. What's that? Thursday, 5 o'clock?
Yes, let me see, because, well, it would be tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah, so, because we got 1 tonight and then 3 tomorrow. Georgia -1 against Notre Dame. I know we got the big quarterback change. I think Georgia, Jay, dramatically undervalued here. Everybody is freaking out because Carson Beck isn't going to play. I think they'll be fine at the quarterback spot. They can play some defense. I don't trust Notre Dame. I think this Georgia -1 is a real reaction to what's going on at quarterback with Georgia. And if you watch the second half of the Texas game, they move the ball pretty well. So I don't know. I think Georgia's undervalued here.
Yeah, well, and for a guy like me that isn't necessarily as tapped into college football as you, that makes me want to run to the window and play Georgia. Notre Dame has blown everybody out since they've lost, and that does matter for me. I love the leadership. I love the coaching. So for me, that's you have moved the needle there for me. That was a game I was laying off until then, but I'll be rooting for Georgia, man. I'm not necessarily rooting for Notre Dame. I think I'd root for them a little bit more if they were in a conference.
Well, and as Cody is thrown into the private chat with Georgia and Carson Beck, it is the Cavender curse. Not that there's hey, listen, curse me, curse my ass. Fine. You see their TikToks and their Instagram. Are you kidding me? They're winning. And Jake Ferguson fumbled, I guess, too. He's a Cowboy. It's another one with the Cavender curse. But then again, that guy's going to be, shacking up with her in St. Croix in about a week. So I don't know. I guess he's maybe the real winner. Jay, I want to end with this, and I know that you and I could have gotten to this last week, but Sports Illustrated ended up doing their rankings of quarterback head coach combos in the NFL, right? So if we do a top 5, number 1 is off the list. So really we're doing 2 through 5 because there's no way you cannot pick Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes number 1. Do we agree?
Totally.
Okay. So 2 through 5. Jay, how do you see this?
What's interesting for me is that it changed for me in a week. So because we prepared this, I prepared this for last week, and I looked at my list and it changed. I see by the look on your face, yours did not change. Is that accurate?
I'm rewriting mine down just to make sure as you go through yours, but on the whole, mine has not changed.
So one point I just want to make that I think is funny. Actually, I'll save that for the end. So I am actually shifting things around, right? So So originally I had this twosome kind of buried, but they are now numbered. Dan Campbell, Jared Goff for me right now. They vault right behind Mahomes and Reed, just based on them saying, fuck you, we're playing everybody and we're winning the game last night, against a San Francisco team that most certainly wanted to beat them. So I get Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson. Love both of them right there. So that would be number 3, or I guess number 2.
That's a good one. And one that I think people undervalue because you don't connect John Harbaugh with offensive football the way you do Jim Harbaugh.
Yep. I like that. And we're going to follow suit with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert because I believe they are only barely scratching the surface. They're going to have an opportunity to play in the postseason. I think Justin Herbert has one NFL postseason game in which they blew like a 27-0 lead or something crazy like that. So yeah, Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert. And then this almost changed, but Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, I still really like LaFleur, and I like Love. It's not been a good year for Love. They haven't beaten those good teams, like you said, but I still really like that combination sort of as we move forward. And then I'm closing it out. DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud, similar to Matt LaFleur, similar to Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, right? I really like DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, but I think it's been sort of a tough year for CJ Stroud in a lot of ways. He's had some guys being banged up. But I like DeMeco Ryans tremendously. I love his leadership. So yeah, that may be a little outside the box selection, but that rounds out my 5.
That's pretty cool. Look, I can't co-sign on the Texans one. I would begrudgingly think of Love and LaFleur maybe at a 5 spot because that I'm not as impressed by Jordan Love as others. And, there's a lot of stats and reasons why. Look, I hate Sean McVay. He looks like someone that I can't stand. But I can't ignore the fact that McDermott and Josh Allen as a head coach quarterback combo work in part because McDermott kind of gets out of the way and lets Josh Allen be Josh Allen when a lot of coaches would get in there and muck it up. And here's the only other duo I would throw in there. And you might think I'm a little nutty for this one because I'm not crazy about the player, but I can't ignore however it's working between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. They're winning games. They're the number 2 seed, and they've kept it together even though the head coach is fighting fucking people on the sideline. Like, that's the crazy part of that.
No, I agree. And it's like, no matter what we see of Nick Sirianni in public, like there's not been a lot of noise over the last several weeks about that. And if the players like him, that really does matter. I know a lot of the Chargers players loved Brandon Staley. I don't think that worked out well, but I think both of us intentionally left out Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow because we don't like Zach Taylor. Correct. I just don't like, even this weekend he had some moments. I don't love the leadership there. It amazes me. There are moments in multiple games this weekend where broadcasters are play-by-play guys, not even the analysts, are like, hey, you think you want to maybe call a fucking timeout? Like multiple coaches that just like, what are we doing here? It just blows my mind.
Did you see our good close personal friend, Bill B. Hoodsworth, one William Hoodsworth Belichick on McAfee? I guess it was yesterday saying, yeah, I don't know what's going on with some of the clock management situations around the league. If Bill is saying that and looking around, he's sitting there like throwing a coffee cup going, look at this dumbass. What are they doing here?
What blows my mind, though, is there are teams that had guys do this. I got a clock management guy. But, finally the NFL has moved to replay like the college game where they give you a quick fucking replay. But it's like any NFL team, if you want to pay me to sit upstairs and watch a television screen, I promise I can help you navigate those end of game clock situations.
You're available for for hire. Fly you in Saturday night, fly you out Sunday night. You can be in there to be the clock consigliere.
And Cody says in the chat, play some more Madden. No, I haven't played Madden in 25 fucking years. I don't need to play a video game to be able to manage clock at the end of a football game. Especially a lot of these guys doing it with 3 timeouts.
You're exactly right. And Jay, you know what it is? It's the whole tight pants society, one side of the ball, never managed a game. You've managed one side of a game, but you've never managed a football game before. And that's where some of these guys, they're too busy thinking about, I want to run, Spider 2 Y banana on this third down. Oh, crap, there's 8 seconds left in the game, and I got no timeouts.
Well, and it's really interesting. I think Kevin O'Connell had a regrettable moment as well, where you saw him just sort of look and almost like, what am I doing here?
Right.
And forgive me, I'm forgetting the exact moment.
No, but I think it was the game against Green Bay that you were talking about that they won by 2, where I think he came out afterwards and said something to the effect of, yeah, I probably should have ended up using a timeout there. I think Raheem Morris, who, by the way, got the job over Bill Belichick in Atlanta, he had a regrettable moment over the weekend where he came out and said, he said, hey, I should have banged one too. A lot of these guys are, and you look back in the moment, and that's the stuff that can cost you games. Everybody makes a big deal about Dan Campbell being aggressive. What's going to lose more games in the postseason are dum-dums who can't read a clock.
And you can be sure, I understand in this game, offenses or teams in general are acutely aware of not leaving any time for the opponent to sort of do anything. So bleeding that clock is important. But Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, those led teams. As a fan, you didn't even have to think about it. Not only were they going to bleed it, they were going to maximize the time for themselves. If they needed to punch one of their timeouts at 43 seconds to allow themselves to run their offense the way they did, they would leave their spot to bleed it. Whereas some of these coaches, literally, it's like the game is chasing them.
You're 1,000% right. And I think you and I can agree to end on this. One of the greatest usages of clock and field position was in the Super Bowl right after Malcolm Butler made the interception. And Tom Brady went out there, backed up against his goal line, and barked them offsides for 5 yards. That is football brilliance. That is Picasso. That is Beethoven, the best of whatever they do. That is what Tom Brady did right there in that moment. And to your point, Jay, that you just mentioned, Belichick, Brady, they thunk it through. They knew how people were going to react, and they used their own stupidity against them. And there was no more shining example than that on the biggest stage after the biggest play. Tom Brady still had enough head about him to say, I'm going to bark these assholes off sides. And they jumped.
It blows I gotta go for a minute here though. The alignment between Belichick and Tom Brady and their minds for this game, they are so elite mentally. I love listening to Brady broadcast games and call it the red area. It's like Belichick and Brady are the only people that don't call it the red zone. They call it the red area, those two guys. But what I will say, I understand Brady gets some criticism as a broadcaster, right? You may not like his voice, and we've talked about this a little bit. He's green as a broadcaster. He'll do things that I notice I do as a green broadcaster, where you'll say last week when you meant last year or things like that. But Tom Brady is doing an incredible job on so many levels. His insight to me, and you do this, you're a football color analyst. He brings up points sometimes that are just so insightful. He's so critical of guys, and even the way guys are running with the football and which arm they're carrying it. I love listening to him. Every single time I'm listening to him, he provides a unique, different perspective. I think he's added so much to the broadcast, even in this short 1 year. I really do.
Brady's doing a good job, and he's getting better, and he hits the detail, and that's what people like you and I love, just like we hopefully give you here on Gas each and every Tuesday. This is the end of 2024. To that we say thank you, good folks, for your patronage. We roll on to 2025. Make sure you subscribe to everyone all the way across the board, including our guy, Cody Marrow. Get him on Twitter, Cody_Marrow. You can get me everywhere at The Real Gresh, Gresh. You can get Jason everywhere at Boston Anik. Happy New Year, my friend.
You too, brother.
Don't drink too much tonight. And people can catch me after the Fiesta Bowl on ESPN Radio, breaking everything down on 300+ stations, where hopefully I will not be drunk and my internet holds up. That's it for us. We will see you next week, where we turn into playoff gas. We'll see you then.